Mystic Wanderer, a practical guide to mysticism with Stephen Weiss. So today, I wanted to talk about something that I find very interesting, and hopefully this can be helpful to some people. I want to talk about ADHD and meditation and mindfulness and mysticism. And before I start, I want to say that I do not have ADHD, and I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I am going to do the thing that I am good at, and that is collecting information from various sources and putting them together to make a helpful picture, which is really what I do with this podcast, or what I'm trying to do, is take information from my different teachers like Ram Dass and Shinzen Young and all of those and put them together for people, right, to kind of give them an overall broader picture. So today I want to encourage anyone, if you have ADHD, about being able to meditate and follow the mystic path, and that you certainly are able to, right? And that there are some things that I want to look at and talk about specifically if that is what you identify with, if you identify with ADHD in some way. You know, in the view of mysticism, right, we're all a divine, beautiful consciousness, right? So there was never any judgment or anything derogatory about this, right? So this is just what we talk about today is neurodivergence, right? So people who are outside of the bell curve, right, in the general experience of how their mind works. So let me get to the symptoms here. One is they call executive dysfunction. They have trouble starting tasks, right? Even things that they think they need to do or feel like they need to do. Hard to get started, hard to stay organized, and have trouble with managing time or even priorities, things that should be important, right? End up often not able to get to them, right? And it's part of the sort of dysfunction of that. Emotional dysregulation, where they will have strong emotions, strong reactions to things, and often difficulty of calming down once they have gotten a strong reaction. And also just managing those feelings, right? They seem unmanageable at times. They're so powerful and overwhelming. But on the other hand, one of the things especially I didn't know about is the hyperfocus, where once they get into a task, once they're starting a task, they get very intensely absorbed into it, so much to the fact that they will lose track of time and what's happening around them. They can be impulsive, acting or speaking without thinking first, interrupting people when they talk to them, risky behavior, right? That's just something that goes along with it, right? And you wouldn't think, what does that have to do with that? But it's just a characteristic of this type of mind. Another one is hyperactivity, to kind of go along with completing tasks. Motivation, regulation. Once you're starting a task, if it's not interesting, it's hard to do. Right, it's hard. And again, probably most of us feel that way, right? So if you're hearing this in this list, it means it's a more extreme version of that, right? The same thing when I, have mentioned to people before that I have chronic fatigue, and they're like, "Oh, I get tired too," and I'm like, it's a different kind of tired, right? So, we all had to have a, probably difficulty doing things that aren't interesting or completing tasks, but this is more exaggerated in this case. And in memory challenges, forgetting instructions for things, losing items, keeping thoughts in the mind, right? So these are all, signs of ADHD, and they can present challenges, right? And as I've said before, one of my favorite teachers, Eckhart Tolle, says there are no problems, only challenges. So again, I want to say, that if you are one of my ADHD listeners, then I have nothing but love and respect for you. And if you'll forgive my ignorance of your actual experience because I don't have it. I'm merely going to try to do my best to bring together, especially what I have here is a lot of scientific studies and things like that that you may not be aware of, that talk about the benefits of these practices. So, and also, I'm going to bring to you ways to do them because I think a lot of people don't realize there are so many ways to practice awareness, mindfulness, meditation. There are more ways than maybe the more common or traditional ways you've heard of. And so, and the resources are out there too, right? You can find them. So the way I relate to this, though, is through my meditation practice, right? Because a lot of the challenges, I would say, are still similar for whether you're neurodivergent or not to a meditation practice. And I can relate to this. Oh, I started meditation 20 years ago. Not exactly around there, right? But because of a traumatic event in my life, I'll probably do an episode about that at some point because it's one of the things that brought me to this place where, I had a very severe abandonment. Someone I loved basically disappeared in the middle of a relationship, went to a different country, never talked to me again. So I had to go face to face with the severe abandonment. And so one of the recommendations to deal with that was meditation. And I will say, and I, out of honesty, that I don't know that I've ever completely recovered from that abandonment. And I don't know if I ever will. So in a way, it's left sort of this permanent wound. I can't explain it. It's one of those paradoxes, I guess, of mysticism. But in a way, I am weaker, but I'm also stronger from that experience. But I leaned into it. I leaned into meditation, and so if you've had trauma, you may know what I'm talking about, right? Where you've found a lot of inner strength, but you also feel that wound still there. You feel the vulnerability, even though hopefully you have found ways to deal with that trauma. Whoever you are listening right now, I encourage you to love and accept all parts of yourself, even the ones you don't like, even the ones that maybe other people don't like, even the ones you're ashamed of or think is some kind of weakness, right? Remember, you are a perfect divine consciousness, and you have been given challenges in this life just like everyone else. And that's not a fatal flaw, and you are not a second level or second class person or consciousness. You are a beautiful divine consciousness, as we all are. You are not insufficient. You are not a failure. You are a beautiful consciousness participating in the universe. So I hope that you are able to love and accept yourself. And right now I want to extend to you that love and acceptance from myself. However you can feel it. If you're watching through the screen, I know it's not the same as being there with you, but if you're listening in your headphones, however you hear this, I'm sending you right now perfect love and acceptance of every part of you, of who you are, unconditionally. And there are no flaws in you. You just have challenges like everyone else. So as I said, I gather resources from different places and I put them together. And there are a lot of studies on ADHD and mindfulness and meditation type of practices, right? Now, when I say mindfulness, it's a very common term, and people talk about mindfulness. It's an awareness practice, right? Where you are able to be aware of your surroundings, you're aware of your thoughts, right? It's in some ways it's sort of it's kind of like vipassana meditation, but maybe not as deep, where you are constantly witnessing and observing what is happening in your thoughts and your mind and in the world around you and your feelings and all that. So, but this type of meditation they studied. So 2019 review of 13 different studies involving 753 different adults. found that mindfulness interventions, including meditation, reduced ADHD-associated difficulties. Other studies found that it improved executive function, right? We talked about the executive dysfunction earlier on, right? Getting things done, managing emotions, right? Also, let's see, what else do I have here? It improves sleep, which is something that can be difficult for someone with ADHD, right? Improves, as I said, emotional regulation, even helps with the impulsiveness, right? Where it, I would say probably what it's doing is slowing the mind down enough and bringing you some awareness, right? If you are able to calm the nervous system by your breathing and mindfulness, right? That'll help just slow things down so you're not impulsively jumping everywhere. But also cultivating the awareness of mindfulness so you can be aware of what you're doing before you do it. So I believe both of those things will help with the impulsiveness. So these participants in these different studies reported that they were very satisfied with the practice and the treatment, right? And not only that, the people in the study reported it helped with anxiety and depression, right? Which often go along with ADHD for what may be obvious reasons. Because in general, I would say, life is more difficult when you have these challenges. So you would be anxious about, failing to meet expectations, forgetting things, not responding to people, forgetting to respond, and also depressed that and it's a very common thing, and with ADHD is to feel shame about these things, right? And I feel like this practice can also help with that, where once you realize that even though you have these certain challenges, right, that everyone really has challenges, and yes, the world has a certain standard and expectations of everyone, so these challenges can make you feel guilty for not living up to those specific ones, right? And I don't understand why, and it changes with culture, but there are definitely, different, challenges and difficulties that are more acceptable in society than others, right? And I think that especially in Western American society, right, being performance, right? Performing your job, performing in your relationships is so highly valued, and you get looked down on if you don't perform, right? And really what the best thing to do for any of that is to understand unconditional love. And really, it starts with unconditional love and acceptance of yourself. So when you realize that you can be loved for exactly who you are and not judged for it, and you realize that through these experiences that there is a divine consciousness, right? A universal consciousness we're all connected to, and that you are part of it, and that you are perfect, and you are loved. I talk about a lot of practices, but I really think that an important awareness, which is not necessarily a practice, but is of love, and that, love is divine, and it's part of the universe, and that we all can experience this love once we stop putting all these labels and judgments and separations from us. And it starts with ourselves. We have to stop judging ourselves and stop labeling ourselves as this, that, and the other, and just realize we are all a consciousness, and we are all part of the divine, and we are loved. And in fact, we are love because we have that divine in us. So if you are ADHD, and these studies have encouraged you, right, that gives you a reason to start a meditation or mindfulness practice. And I'm going to talk about different ways to do it. Okay? But, and finally, another, article I was reading about ADHD says they believe, right? And I'm not telling you, I'm just telling you what the article said. They believe that it's essential to practice some type of mindfulness and meditation for ADHD because it gets you out of the sort of adrenaline cycle, the always being on, cycle. It gives your brain and your body a break from that sort of, being in sympathetic or fight or flight all the time. So hopefully I've made a good case for it. But again, as I say in every or almost every podcast, that none of this is necessary. We're all alive. We are beings. Everything is well. You are well, right? There's no performance thing that you have to do. But if you feel like this is something you're being called to, you feel like it's your path, then I'm here to help give you what I can. And again, what I do is often bring together pieces from many different places and put them all together. A lot of the difficulties that ADHD people have with meditation are similar to most of the people that I talk to that have that. Again, they may be more challenging, but it's usually in the vein of I can't focus, I get distracted, I can't sit still, I feel restless, my thoughts make me uncomfortable. These are all very normal things that happen in a meditation practice. And I want to encourage you that, in a sense, it's like riding a bicycle, right? It's such a good analogy, I use it, but you fell off a lot at first, right? It took a while for your brain to figure out the whole balance on a bicycle thing, but it was there. It's in there, and it's sort of kind of a natural skill, right? Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, it's so easy, and you don't think about it, and you're like, how could I never have done this, right? And I think in a sense, meditation is like that if you understand what meditation is. The problem is, most people think that once you get to a certain level of meditation, you just sit there and you're peaceful and you don't have any thoughts and you're just, right, perfect stillness. And that is not it. Most of us are doing it because we get these moments that last for a few seconds of quiet thought, of quiet absence of thought, of stillness of mind and heart, right? And those are so precious and so good, we keep coming back. And in the meantime, we end up sitting and I guess putting up with, or accepting would be a better term, with all the being distracted and all the random thoughts and feeling restless and not being able to sit still. Because once we get to a point where we get enough of that quiet stillness, that we want more of it. And then, of course, once you're getting that, then you're getting to where you're getting all those benefits that I mentioned before, right? The less anxiety and depression and more emotional regulation and less impulsiveness and all those things start coming when you get there. But again, as I said before, the type of meditation you do doesn't have to be the traditional sitting either. So I'm going to tell you right now, get excited. So I'm going to tell you a bunch of different things you can do. And I'm betting that at least one of them is going to be something that you're able to do. And the best part about it is the way meditation works and all these practices work is there's never any judgment. There's not really a goal. You're doing it because you feel like you want to. And in the end, it does feel good. But you don't judge it. You don't score it, and let me tell you, just the fact that you did it, whatever practice it is, for however long of time you did it. Yay, you made it. That's the goal. You took some time and you did the practice. That's really all there is. You don't have to get to a certain state. You don't have to even have a specific outcome, but you just have that practice. And even just that in itself really brings benefits. So let's get into talking about the different practices. Now here is a type, and actually one of my teachers, Shinzen Young, recommends this meditation for ADHD, which is, it's going to sound weird, but it's called the do nothing meditation. And it's one of those things where some people will find this easier to do than others. So this may be a thing for you. So you go find a place and you sit and you don't have any intention or focus. You just let whatever happens with your mind happen. Now, for some people, this would be terrifying. But on the other hand, you don't have to worry about an effort of trying to focus on something specific. You are just letting your mind be. The skill that you're developing here, and I've talked about acceptance so often, right? Accepting what happens, accepting feelings, accepting, what you're experiencing. There's a deeper level of acceptance that is referred to by many teachers as equanimity. So let me tell you the difference. Acceptance is sort of something happens and it may be disturbing, or a thought comes up you don't like, and then you have a reaction. Oh, ugh, I don't like that. But then you decide, all right, I accept it. And you let go of that feeling or that reaction or that aversion. And so in a sense, acceptance is practice for equanimity. Once you develop the skill of acceptance for long enough, it transforms into equanimity, where equanimity just allows everything to be, and then the judgments don't come. The thoughts don't come. You're like, oh, there's a thing, there's a thing, there's a thought, there's a feeling, there's a memory, there's an image, there's this, there's that. All these things coming up in your consciousness or coming up in your environment. Those are all things. Yep, there they are. And they don't change your emotional response or your body response. You have equanimity, which is amazing, right? And I mostly have acceptance. Sometimes I have equanimity, but it's usually for fleeting moments. The point is this meditation actually is great training for equanimity, because you don't care about what you're doing. In fact, the only real practice that you're doing in the do nothing meditation is that if you realize you're trying to do something in the meditation, you stop. And you're not scanning for that. You're not always like, am I trying? Am I trying? No. If the realization comes up that you were trying to do something, then you gently let it go. Okay. That's done. And you let it go. And then you go back to letting your mind go wherever it goes. Eventually, when you let it run around and everything, it starts to realize it's safe and it's not going to be judged or guided. And you get something about, and what happens is you sort of eventually, you're kind of sneaking around your consciousness, right? You're developing skills of meditation while, in a sense, not doing anything, but you're doing nothing in a very intentional way, which is also without intent. It's another paradox of mysticism, right? But there's that kind of meditation, right? Where there's really no boundaries, no goal, anything like that. So that might be an interesting place to start. You just sit, right? That's what some people call it, just sitting. You're like, all right. And really the only commitment is like, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm going to sit here for 15, 20 minutes and whatever I think of, whatever happens, doesn't matter. Now, one benefit though, that I will mention is that because I've meditated for a long time, that when I go to meditate, my body is like, oh, I know what this is. And it starts to slow my breathing down. So I sort of automatically get this benefit. Like even if my mind was all over the place, I got the benefit of deep, slow breathing for 15 or 20 minutes, right? If that's how long I sat. That's a great benefit just in itself. The deep and slow breathing is very nice. Very good for you. So even if you just breathed more slowly for a while, you've done something. In fact, that's sort of our next recommendation for meditation. Breath meditation. And, you might even not count it as a meditation. It's like a breath control. Now, from what I understand is in some cases, ADHD folks do really well with counting. Like counting is really good for you. So what you do is count your breathing, and I usually start with fives and then a pause. So 5 seconds out, and you just count 1, 2, not out loud in your mind. You can count out loud if you want. It won't hurt anything. Well, actually, you can't count out loud if you're breathing. Right? Forget I said that. That doesn't make sense. So you're counting in your head, right? And you're just breathing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I pause, kind of the space in between breathing. And then breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after I kind of get comfortable, I will change it to 6 and even 7, right? 7's usually as far as I go, but Every once in a while, I'll get really deep into it and I'll do 9 or 10. And I'm like, wow, this feels really good. I don't know why it feels really good, but it sure does. So, and it also is sort of a cheating, like if you can't really focus on anything else, giving your mind counting, works pretty well for a lot of people. And if you need a second thing to think of or, to keep you from being distracted, as you count, feel your breath going in and out. And that's it. That's the whole meditation, breathing and counting, right? And so that's totally another thing you can do. By the way, most of these meditations don't have to be done sitting, right? Now, it is true if you lie down like prone in a bed, your brain will kind of get the signal that it's time to go to sleep. So you most likely will fall asleep if you lay down totally. If you I recline in a recliner a lot, and it doesn't make me fall asleep. So, but the point I was going to make is that you can also do walking meditation. If you have a place you can regularly walk, especially, you get the added benefit of being in nature, trees, birds. All these things are calming to the nervous system. Seeing lots of green, calming to the nervous system. Birdsong, calming, right? And you just walk, and either you can count your breaths and breathe, or you can do the do nothing meditation where you just kind of let your body walk. I mean, it's going to be probably on a trail, so it knows where to go. You don't have to think about where you're walking too much, right? You just walk, and so you can walk. You don't have to be in a specific place, and you can use sound, right, as well. I think more, I didn't think about it too much, but I usually use meditation music. It's usually very peaceful Eastern type stuff with some flute or something, but because I've done that so often, it kind of signals to my body and my brain that, oh, it's time to meditate, right? So that music comes on and there's an association with peacefulness and breathing more slowly. And so it's very useful. So you might have a certain meditation song that you meditate to, or a really great thing that people do is guided meditation. And wow, we live in the age of YouTube. Now, at some point, I might do a guided meditation, but it's sort of unnecessary because there are so many out there, and I would just be mostly duplicating their efforts. But you can basically listen to someone peaceful talking to you and saying, all right, now we're going to breathe in, and it's sort of almost they're meditating for you, right? You just relax and kind of do whatever they say, and those can go by more quickly too. You're like, oh, it's been 20 minutes already, and you can even look up, 20-minute guided meditation. Boom, there it is, and then you go listen to it, and it's, so there's guided meditation. There is also, and I love this stuff, and I actually do both of these things now that I think about it, is movement meditation, right? So we have things like Tai Chi, and it's, I guess relative Qigong, which are both, Chinese movement techniques, sort of related to martial arts, but sort of related to Chinese medicine as well, very spiritual. And I started doing Qigong because of my fatigue issues, because I had read that it could help some people. And Qigong is a slow, or Tai Chi, very similar, slow, controlled movements that you learn, and you could follow along somebody else, right? So you don't have to memorize it. You can go on a video and follow along, and you breathe. And certain movements are, like going up is usually associated with breathing in, and going down is associated with breathing out. And you eventually learn kind of that pattern. And so that, and yoga, right? Yoga, because you're also doing breathing, if you're doing like serious yoga instead of just like stretching or whatever, right? You're doing breathing, you're being in your body, right? So both of these things make you really aware of your body and grounded in the moment, right? And aware of things. So both Tai Chi and yoga are very useful types of practices as well. So there are so many things you can do, right? But let's talk about sort of a general practice of meditation. So when you meditate, right? Again, you're not turning into some super being or whatever, right? It is a practice, and all kinds of things could happen while you're sitting there, at least mentally, right, in your thoughts. or feelings. And that's okay, right? The big point of what I'm saying is you just don't judge it. There's no score. There's not even really a goal except to sit there. But I encourage you to, at least 5 days a week, have a 15 to 20 minute meditation practice. And I know that it's a challenge to schedule things. I'm going to talk about that too later, okay? But I encourage you to have a regular practice. I'm also talking to myself right now. Keep your regular practice going, Steve. But you don't ever need to have guilt, annoyance, frustration. Oh, I thought of something. Oh, I had a thought, right? That's just not, that's not how it goes. I've been meditating for, like I said, a long time. And still, usually the first 5 or 10 minutes is just me going through thoughts. There's a thought, there's a thought, there's a thought, there's a thought. Right? It takes a while between the breathing and the music and everything for things to settle down. That's normal. Okay? So you're going to have thoughts, you're going to have feelings. The big practice is, you're aware of them, right? And you see them and you accept them. And what's going to happen in almost all of these types of meditation is that you're going to lose focus and you're going to get pulled off by a thought. This is how thinking works. It's really strange. We actually don't know where our thoughts come from. Now, usually what happens is if we're thinking, we can sort of follow this chain back. Oh, I'm thinking of this because I thought of this, because I thought of this. But eventually you sort of get back to this original thought that kind of came out of nowhere. Where did it come from? Right? And you didn't sit there and think, I'm going to have this thought, right? You didn't intend for this thought. It just pops in and then you think it. And then once you have that thought, then the other thoughts follow. And that's more sort of a voluntary, oh yeah, now I'm going to think about this. And you choose to think about it and you have all these thoughts. And what I call that is the pull, right? Thoughts appear and they have a pull. And I can't, one of my teachers, I forget, it says it, but they have a pull that says, think me, right? Think about me. And one of the skills you get as you meditate is to feel that pull, right? So the thought comes up and you feel, and some are stronger than others, right? It's like, oh man, I really want to think about this. I really want to go off on this trail that this thought came up with, right? So sometimes you will, and that's okay. Sometimes, it doesn't matter how good you get at it, you get pulled off, the thought will drag you along, you'll think it, you'll go way, somewhere, now you're thinking about zebras on Mars or whatever, and then you pop back to awareness, oh, I'm supposed to be meditating. This is when you have to not judge yourself and not feel bad. This is the skill. It's several skills. 1, you learn to feel the pull. 2, you practice awareness. At some point, you will realize that you have drifted. And then the third skill is the acceptance equanimity skill, where you don't yell at yourself. You don't be like, I suck at meditation, right? You don't do any of that stuff. You say, okay, that happened. Now I will return to the center, whatever the type of meditation it is, right? If you're moving meditation, you'll go back to being conscious of your body. If you're doing breath meditation, you'll focus on the breath. Or if you're counting, you'll focus on the counting. You'll just go back to the counting. Or as my favorite meditation, the Vipassana, the mindfulness observation, you just go back to watching your thoughts. What's next? And the idea behind the mindfulness is the next thought comes up and you see it and you recognize it. Oh, there's a thought about trains. I could think about trains. You feel the pull, right? So you learn to feel that pull. And then you say, okay, there's a thought about trains. And then you just gently let it go. Okay, what's the next thought? And you wait for the next thought or feeling or image, right? You get different things come up. Memories can appear. Images of things can appear. And you observe them. Oh, there's that. And each one of these memories, images, thoughts, feelings will have a pull that wants you to engage with it and continue. And you will with some of them. But eventually you want to get back to that state where you're just watching again. So you watch, you observe. Oh, there's a thought about trains. Let it go. Oh, there's a memory from my past. Okay, let it go. And go back to watching what comes up next, right? Again, who knows where our thoughts come from? We are a weird mystery, right? But what happens to us is those original thoughts lead us down trails. The important point is you come back and you are gentle with yourself. It's okay. I thought this thought. I went down a trail. That's okay. That's what happens. And I'll go back to my center and just go back to observing. No judgment, no performance, no guilt. You're just there. And there's no one scoring you, right? No one's at the end going to give you a score on this. And don't do it yourself. You're not going to do it either. You did your thing. You committed time to do this. You breathed. You walked. You counted. You observed. Whatever you did it. That's it. Remember, as I say often, one of my teachers, Alan Watts, says, don't take anything too seriously. Right? This is all really, I know it feels deadly serious. Sometimes, especially with ADHD, you're in this struggle all the time to meet these expectations and do these things. I know it feels that way. Right? I've seen it. Right? And I haven't experienced it myself. I'm saying that, but I have seen that kind of anxiety, that level of fear that you're not meeting expectations. But really, life is just not that serious. So I hope that you can somewhat let it go. And I don't expect it to just happen. You listen to my podcast once, you're like, I've let it go. I don't care anymore, But with these practices, you will not only have these benefits, but eventually, by freeing yourself of all the constant distraction and thoughts and worries, you will start to feel the touch of the divine consciousness, the universal presence, the God, the creator, the source. You will start to feel that, and through that, I believe, sincerely, you will feel the love of that consciousness, the acceptance of that consciousness. The acceptance, because you are a child of that consciousness, right? You're a manifestation of that consciousness. And for whatever reason, us human beings are given the highest form of it. We are able to create and love and make music and do all these things to a divine level that is so wonderful and amazing. And the more we take time to breathe and communicate with that stillness, the more we can have an experience that is beyond thought, beyond explanation in words, and really does boil down to love. And it's a love experience that gives us a full feeling of our purpose. So you've got walking meditation, you've got Tai Chi, you've got mindfulness, right? You've got breathing, you've got counting. There's another type, transcendental meditation, where you have sort of a word or a mantra you repeat over and over again, right? And I haven't done this one, but for some people, it's very powerful. Some people swear by TM, right? So there's another sort of emotional processing method where when emotions come up, you move into them, accept them, and love them, and nurture yourself, right? The RAIN method, it's called. And that's another thing you can do, right? One great one is the body scan method, where you relax, you breathe, and you move the light of your consciousness to every part of your body. And actually, Shinzen Young has one of these that's kind of an addition to the body scan method. He calls it the global relaxation or the relaxation pleasure method, where you shine the light of your consciousness on your face, and then as you do it, you relax your face. And then, this is really good, by the way. I love this. This is kind of like, if I can't do any other meditation, I do this one because this is the easiest one for me. Is you shine the light of consciousness on your face, you relax your face, and then you feel how good it feels to relax your face. You're like, oh man, that is good. And then you move to the back of your head, and you relax the back of your head and your neck, and you move to each part of your body, your arms, your legs, your feet. You relax them, and then you note and feel how good it is to relax that part of your body. It's really great. And to go through your whole body, it's going to take like 15 or 20 minutes anyway, if you breathe and slow down and take your time. So I love that one. So, and there's other body scan type yoga nidra also is something similar to that. But I want to give you another one. It doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be 15 or 20 minutes. You can do little tiny ones throughout the day. In fact, I have on my phone a person sitting in the lotus position meditating, right? And the idea is whenever I see that image, it reminds me to take a deep breath and relax. And that's like a one breath meditation. You did it for one breath. That's actually a good practice. I mean, if you do it several times a day, obviously it's probably the best way to do it. And one thing that I have noticed, after meditating for a long time is eventually your mind, remembers the relaxation state that you get to. And you can recall it. So once I've done a long, years and years of meditation, I'm like, oh, that feeling. And so I can recall it to a level, maybe not the full level, but I can sit and take a deep breath and go, and remember that peaceful state that I get to in meditation. And it brings it back for a moment. So there's that, right? You can do music, you can do guided meditation, right? And all of these different things can help. And as we said, the scientific studies show that they help with the challenges of ADHD. So specifically, scientifically, what these things do, these practices do, is they increase your self-awareness. Right? You that's your practice, is being aware of yourself. So you're aware of what's happening to you when it's happening. It gives you more of an element of control in your life, right? The meditation trains you to notice thoughts and feelings because you get this pause and you get the separation from them. So you're like, oh, there they are. Studies show it strengthens your prefrontal cortex and calms the amygdala, the part of your brain that is signaling fight or flight all the time, right? It improves your stress tolerance, right? When you get into these states, you're building up strength for your nervous system. So you're able to tolerate stress better. And because of this practice, because of the emotions that come up, and you learn to sit with them, you learn to accept them, it helps you to, when uncomfortable emotions come up in other times of life, helps you be with them and accept them and live with them without being overwhelmed. So I want to encourage you, if you do have ADHD and you want to do this practice, celebrate your small successes, right? You don't have to suddenly, have an amazing practice overnight, right? But, what I'd say at first is try out these different methods that I've given you, right? All the different methods, and see which one works for you. And then I know that if you do have ADHD, then you have most likely some method of reminding yourself to do things, of being organized, right? Because you have to. So I believe in you. I believe you can also use those methods to remind yourself to have a meditation practice. But what I don't want you to do is ever associate guilt or shame or performance with meditation, right? This needs to be a safe space in your life, a safe practice that's going to bring you peace, love, and acceptance. And that's what I want it to be for you. So I want to end with just another practice. There is a Buddhism practice called metta, which I have heard as loving kindness meditation is how I was first introduced to it. And it's a meditation where you sit and relax, and you start with love, and it's loving kindness, and you end with love, and you start by loving yourself. At the beginning of the day, you can set an intention, and that intention is something like, may I be kind to myself. May I be safe. May I be happy. And even for me, it's like, oh, it sounds kind of hippie or woo-woo or something, but man, it's a thing, and it's real. And why wouldn't you be kind to yourself? And why wouldn't you want to be safe and happy? So you can intend that for yourself at the beginning of the day. And it's not so much like you're saying magic words that'll make you be safe or happy. What it is are words that affirm love for yourself and that you wish yourself well. And that is, so you can practice metta that way, right? And you can also start with yourself. But the full practice, if you sit down to do loving kindness meditation, is you start with yourself and you love and accept yourself and you feel that and accept that. And you repeat things to yourself. May I be kind to myself. May I be safe. May I be happy. Right? And then you bring it out in larger and larger circles. You bring it out to your family. You bring it out to your neighbors. You bring it out to people that you don't like or who don't like you, right? So it's a loving practice. Can you love those people? And then eventually you bring it out to the whole world, right? And you bring love to the whole world. So you can start your day with the metta intention, be kind to yourself, may you be safe, may you be happy. And realize that when you do practice, you sometimes hear thoughts and voices, but they're not you. Those thoughts are just words. And eventually, you'll learn to practice acceptance of whatever comes, be able to let it go. And acceptance leads to our equanimity. Equanimity, you won't get disturbed by these things anymore. You'll have learned, you'll have practiced acceptance enough that you don't. You don't judge the words that show up, and you don't judge yourself. When you sit and practice, you just watch, you observe. But, regardless, you can do these practices or not. It's fine, right? No matter whether you do them or not, I want you to know that you are life. You are alive. You are a consciousness participating in the divine. And it doesn't matter what the world thinks or what other people think, or even your own condemning thoughts don't matter. They don't change the fact that you are a beautiful, amazing, divine, perfect creature, a perfect consciousness that has a pure purpose and reason to exist here. And as you practice, as you awaken, right, you will see that life isn't about doing things and accomplishing things. It's about experiencing the vastness of all the wonderful things that have been given to us and experiencing them in the present moment without being trapped in the past, without being lost in the future, being able to be in your current moment and exist and enjoy being alive. That's what this practice is. And you simply are. You exist. And that is beautiful. And it's amazing. So regardless of whether you do any of the practices, know that it's all right. You're meant to be here. You're meant to be alive. You're meant to have challenges, experience emotions. You're meant to have all that stuff, just like every other person here. And even though that experience may not be what some would call typical, it's still the experience of being alive. And you are alive. And you are just as worthy as any other consciousness that's out there. And so I pray and I believe that you will experience the total acceptance of the consciousness of the universe and understand that the basic, the core of that consciousness is love.
The Mystic Wanderer